Irashaimase! Hello and welcome to Fataris' Kitchen. I'm your host, Chef Fataris. It's time once again for Shoot 'em Up Saturday, and on the menu this week we have Sky Revolver. What kind of taste will it have? Let's get cooking and find out. From developer Chili Dog Interactive, Sky Revolver released in April of 2025 for the Xbox and the PlayStation 4 and 5, which is the version we're looking at today. This title is a modern vertical scroller with a widescreen presentation. There's a lot of content to this game, but at least for me, it got repetitive and dull fairly quickly. However, if you do want to check out the title, its price point is relatively low, so the barrier to entry is not that high. Finding ourselves at the main menu. So the game does have a settings menu, but there's not a whole lot here. You can't customize your buttons or change anything with the video settings, just language selection and a couple audio sliders. Then we have New Game, which will restart your progress, and considering there's a lot of content to grind through, I wouldn't necessarily recommend that. And then we have Continue, which will start you where your save file currently is at. So selecting Continue takes us to this point, and from here we can see just how much content the game has. So I'm at about the halfway point through the whole game itself, and as you can go down you can see there are a lot of stages to this game. Unfortunately, one thing that I have a problem with is the game does get repetitive. With all these stages, you have a lot of stages that repeat as far as the graphics are concerned, and then some of the enemies themselves, well, we'll get to that here in just a little bit. But overall, the game, including the tutorial, the game has 51 stages, so there is quite a bit of content. Starting with the first stage, we'll go and kind of show you a little bit about how that content is presented. So as I mentioned, it does have a widescreen presentation, and as far as the graphics are concerned, they look relatively clean. Your movement, of course, is going to be relatively standard for this kind of a title, and one thing I do have to say, compared to some widescreen presentation vertical scrollers, this one doesn't feel as claustrophobic as some do. One thing to note, it almost feels like this game had a bit of a mobile design influence, as the shot that it uses is an auto shot, so we're always firing, with the exception of a couple different types of stages. But we do have a couple other abilities that we can use aside from our shot. There's also some power-ups we can pick up, but we'll talk about those in just a moment. So as far as our abilities we can use, we have a rocket barrage that once fired will fire several rockets at the enemy. These rockets home in, and they're pretty tenacious. So after destroying an enemy, they'll home in on another target. And once you've used your rocket barrage, it does take a bit to recharge, and that is displayed there on the right. So once the rocket is blinking again, we have the ability to fire that. In addition to our rocket barrage, we also have our what's called a vortex dodge, but it's basically a shield that will protect you from enemy bullets for a brief period of time. In most stages, we'll come across this shop here called the airbase. Here, we can pick up one of 4 different one-time use abilities that will either give us a energy barrier, so it's true invincibility for 10 seconds, weapon amplifier increases our firepower for 20, a speed up for 20 seconds as well, and then a bomb. Then we also have 1-ups, so you do start with 1 and you can purchase up to 5 lives. We can increase the number of rockets we have for a rocket barrage. It starts with, I believe, 3-4 rockets, and you can get up to a total of 8. And then we have our, maybe just 7 on that one. And then we have the vortex dodge, which increases its duration and decreases the cooldown, so it is kind of nice. We get the money by defeating enemies, and some enemies have some additional money that we can pick up from them as well. So the game is wave-based, so you can see here that we continually see the same waves of enemies repeat themselves. That's part of where the game has a problem, is once you've encountered an enemy one time, the waves you encounter are always going to be the same. There's not really any variation to the enemy types. There are 3 weapon power-ups we can pick up. So there's the L, which gives us this laser. There's a P, which gives us a pulse shot, which is really powerful. And then we have an R, which is kind of a helix shot that does really well at taking out enemies quickly as well. Although if you're looking to go and do the highest damage, the P is definitely where it's at. One thing that's unfortunate with that, and in addition to that, also our abilities, is everything is timed. So your power-ups are going to wear out after a short period of time, which I mentioned earlier. We're also going to use through the weapon pickups, the power-ups that we get as well. And that's something that's kind of disappointing, because it would be nice if we could pick a different weapon and kind of just stick with it for a time. So after you complete the stage, you're forwarded all the way back to the highest level that you have currently completed. So on the right, we currently have like what it views your current life total at your current like power level, as well as the money that we've accumulated. So for something a little bit different, I'm going to go and show you the stage Neon Hell. So this is something that was introduced later in the game, and I do appreciate this as it breaks up the type of gameplay. So in this, we've got these neon bars that are flying at us, and we need to avoid them. There's no enemies in this stage, so our auto fire is turned off, and we don't have the ability to use either our rockets or our shield. However, we can use these items, so that's one thing to keep in mind. Oh, so those special one-time items, I didn't go and actually show you how to use them. So you press a button to bring up the menu, and then you select which one you want to use there, which is fine for the power-ups, but for the bomb itself, that's actually a little bit awkward. As you go into that menu, you use your bomb, and then once you exit out, the bomb actually goes off. So it doesn't seem quite right. So, as I mentioned, there is quite a bit of content to this game itself with the 50 stages. And one thing I can say is that as I've been playing, even though once you've seen an enemy wave, the enemy wave will behave in the same way time and time again, you will encounter new enemies as you go through the stages, as at this point I'm still encountering new enemy types, and in addition to that we also have the bosses. So along those lines, let's go ahead and end things with the boss while we talk about some of the issues that I have with the game itself. Ultimately, the biggest problem I have with the game is it feels just on the slow side. With the enemy waves basically being the same and repeating, and once you've gotten familiar with them, everything just kind of has this slow pace to it, and there's no real easy way to speed that up. And as far as the power is concerned, you do have that rocket barrage, but it takes time to recharge, so you want to use it at the correct time, and the other power-ups you have to use be really careful for your usage, as we only have one-time use for them. It is nice that the shops go and come up in most stages. I believe there's one stage that I've encountered that doesn't have a shop, in addition to the Neon Hell stages. Those ones don't. But we'll use some of those one-time power-ups against our boss here. So now we find our first boss. This is the Robo Octopus. So it has a couple different phases. It starts off by using the shots there. And one thing to note about the shots is you have a lot of shots that will ultimately be homing shots. We can see the boss's health in the top right. Unfortunately, because of the way that laser is tracking us, we do have to be careful with our movement. So let's go and use one of those our bomb now. So to select our bomb, we have to go into this menu and choose bomb. It said bomb dropped, but if you press the button again, it's like saying the slot is empty. So as I said, the bomb doesn't go off till we actually leave the menu. It's definitely on the awkward side for sure. It does deal some good damage though, so we do need to be careful in this phase, as the boss, any contact with the enemies will result in losing life. Now the boss transfers into this next phase, and for the sake of defense, let's go and activate our invisibility, and we'll also throw on our weapon amplifier for a more powerful shot. So as you can see here, our weapon now has 4 shots instead of just the 2 that it was firing before, And that power-up does carry over to the 3 different weapon upgrades that we can get. So as we see here, we picked up the P, and we were able to make very quick work of the boss using those abilities. So as far as the minus flavors are concerned, the issues that I take with the game is that, as I was mentioning, things just feel on the slow side. And then you have that just repetitive feeling of having stages with the same background set, the same enemies, that after you've been introduced to the enemies, and as I said though, like halfway through the game, at least I still am seeing new enemy types, but they always behave in the same pattern. So you basically have one enemy type with the same kind of enemy pattern. Like these boats here, when they were introduced, I thought, hey, that's pretty cool, but they always kind of behave the same way. So it would have been nice if they're, with the same enemies that we were encountering, if there might have been just a little bit more to the way that they were designed. But there are a couple plus flavors definitely in the game itself. So the fact that there are a total of 50 stages, it's one that at least from a time perspective, you're definitely getting your money's worth out of playing the game itself. The fact that you have a different variety as well, with a fair number of bosses throughout, even if some of the bosses are refights, and then some other stage types like that Neon Hell that I showed off is definitely a plus, given, as I mentioned in the intro, the price point is quite low. So from a value standpoint, the value is there. However, overall, the gameplay is just relatively dull and boring. So at the end of the day, this isn't really a title that I can recommend to anybody, but it's still, if it's something that it looks interesting to you, then keep in mind it's an easy one to be able to pick up. And with that, we find ourselves at the end of this week's episode of Shoot 'em Up Saturday. As always, we want to thank you for joining us. We hope you have a wonderful week yourself, and we look forward to seeing you again next time.